All right, so today we are doing lesson 10.1, graphing quadratic equations. Before we start, you need to pause and make sure that you have graph paper, tons of paper. Each problem takes about a page, and please make sure that you watch all of this. It's going to be there's a lot of details in this lesson. So here we go, and feel free to pause it along the way, rewatch it, until you got it, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, so right now I am doing lesson 10.1. I am working on example 3 from your book on page 526. All right, so they are giving us example 1. Y is equal to negative 3x squared minus 6x plus 4. And we have to graph that. So hopefully last 2 weeks ago when you were graphing, you had all those ordered pairs, and this is going to save you a lot of time, hopefully. So anyways, there's multiple steps to this. So in order to graph it, step 1 is we have to find the axis of symmetry. So first of all, to make sure what the axis of symmetry is, the axis of symmetry is known as the fold line, meaning it's that dotted line that's going to go down your graph. So that's what we're trying to find. So the equation is x is equal to negative b over 2a. So where do we get those from? Up here. This is A. This is B. And this is C. Now I know for this equation, and for a little bit, we're not using C, but I just want to at least go ahead and tell you what it is. All right, so now we're going to plug in this information into this equation. So x is equal to negative B. Now I realize now looking at it that my B's do look a lot like 6s. So, but I'm going to be plugging in a negative 6 over 2, and A is negative 3. So all I've done is B, which was negative 6, 2, and A is negative 3, and there was a negative on the outside. So a negative and a negative makes a positive 6. 2 and negative 3 is negative 6. 6 divided by negative 6 is negative 1. So now before you go on, you're going to graph that. So we're setting up your graph. You don't know how big these graphs are going to be. So I'm going to make mine pretty large. I wish I could use my smartboard right now. I was having technical difficulties. Okay. So going back to here, it shows us that x is negative 1. X is equal to negative 1. So our axis of symmetry is negative 1. And I'm really clear on my labeling to make sure that because there's going to be so many things you have to find, that you're letting me know that you definitely know what the axis of symmetry is. X is equal to negative 1. So you have to label x equals negative 1. So going over to here on the x-axis, you go to negative 1. And your dotted line, you're going to make a dotted line crossing that. And I'm going to label that x is equal to negative 1 right next to it somewhere. So if it was a positive 1 or whatever, a positive number, it'd be somewhere over here. So that is going to be our fold line. Step 2 is to find the coordinates of the vertex. So step 2 is to find the vertex. So earlier you found out that x was equal to negative 1, we just found. So you are going to plug that into your equation, into your original equation. So the original equation being y equals negative 3x squared minus 6x plus 4. So you're going to plug in negative 1 into your x's. So y is equal to negative 3 times negative 1 squared minus 6 times negative 1 plus 4. So all I've done is taken the negative 1 that I found earlier and plugged that into the x. Now this is really important that you are always following the order of operations. So the order of operations says that I do the exponents first. Now if you just plug this whole thing into your calculator, I can't promise you it's going to get it right. Some people's calculators won't follow the order of operations. So negative 3, negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Now this is, be careful, this is negative 6 times negative 1. So that makes that plus 6 and then plus 4. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 6 plus 4 is equal to 7. Now I write that as an ordered pair. So what I mean by that is that we had our x earlier, which is negative 1, and our y we just found is 7. So that's your vertex. So that's another thing that we have to label. So we have our axis of symmetry, and now we have our vertex. So now you go back to the graph you just had, and you are going to graph that point. So on the axis of symmetry, the fold line, now symmetry means that's where our line is going to be symmetric. It's going to be the same on both sides of that dotted line. So then we are going to put a dot on the negative 1, positive 7. So I already am at negative 1, and I'm going to go up 7. And I'm going to label that negative 1 and 7. That's our vertex. So now we are going to identify this. Step 3, I can fit that on this page, is step 3, is your vertex a maximum or a minimum? Now, meaning, is your vertex the highest point or the lowest point of your graph? So looking at the equation that we have, remember when it's a negative, when it starts off negative, it means it's going to be a downward facing graph, like a frown. So when it's in a positive number, it'd be an upward facing graph. So if this is going down, now I don't know what it's going to look like, so you're hopefully visualizing me like doing a frown, that you can see that this would be the highest point of your graph because it's going down from that point. If you were going up, this would be the minimum because it's the lowest point of the graph, but this is the highest point of the graph. So this is a maximum. All right, and the last step is to graph it. So we don't know where this, is this gonna, like when you did your 5 questions last week, you had lots of little points. So we need to find like a connect the dot point. So this is where you're gonna pick any number and you're gonna plug it in. You're gonna find any x. Step 4 is pick a value for x. An easy one for x to plug in is 1 or 2, something small. The only number you cannot use for this one is -1 because we already did -1. So you're picking any number for x, and you'll see why in a minute once we actually graph it. So let's just, an easy number for x is +1. So I'm going to plug in 1 back into that equation again. Y is equal to -3x squared minus 6x plus 4. So -3 Plugging at a positive 1 this time. So -3, positive 1, minus 6 plus 4. -3 minus 6 plus 4. -9 plus 4, -5. So y is -5. So we write that as an ordered pair, 1 and -5. So now we go back to that graph again, and we are going to plot that point, 1, -5. So be careful. This happens every time. Kids start from the fold line. Remember, you're starting from the origin when you're doing this. So we go over 1 and then down 5. Now, this fold line means that it's symmetrical. Axis of symmetry means it's symmetrical. So we has a mirror image on each side of the fold line. So here's the fold line. We have a dot 2 points over from the fold line, 1, 2. So that means here I would go over 2 spots. So now we don't have to do that huge table that you all were doing last week. We're done. This is it. So it takes some practice. You remember, you're not making a V, you're making a U, or an upside down U. So it's kind of hard to do. And then that is your answer. So you should make sure that when you're looking at this, it is symmetrical. Here's my fold line. I went over 2 dots here, and I have 2 dots here. And that is that. All right, let's do another one. This time, I know that took 11 minutes to do one problem. So I'm gonna go a little bit faster so you can see what it really actually looks like. You know, I want to kind of pick a little bit of a different one in case this comes up on your IXL. Let's do this one. It looks weird, so I kind of want to do that one just so they don't all look like that trinomial. All right, so here we go. The first step, if you go back to my notes, is that I didn't state this earlier, but the first step should actually be to label A, B, and C. So your A is always the number that's in front of the x squared. So this is your A. The B is the number that's in front of x. So this time we don't have just a regular x. So B, we don't have a B. And this is C. So A is 1, B is 0, and C is 2. So I'll go back to explain that. A is the number that's in front of x squared. Technically, we have a 1 in front of it. B, because we don't have a middle term, is 0. And C doesn't matter for this, but it's for later on, you'll need it. So now, for the axis of symmetry, x is equal to -b over 2a. So that would be -0 over 2 times 1. So that would be 0. So my fold line is going to be on the 0. So it's hard to see that because I already have a line there, so I'm going to use a different color. So my fold line is on top of that. It's just hard to see it because it's right there, but it's on top of it. Step 2 is to do the vertex. So the vertex means that I plug 0. Oops, and I write that as an ordered pair. So I plug 0 in for x, and I found y, and since the x was 0, the y is 2, so I go up 2. So here I didn't label x is equal to 0, that's my axis of symmetry. My vertex is 0, 2. And now to figure out if it's a maximum or minimum, so this time it is an upward facing graph, so it's going to be like a smiley face. So if it's an upward facing graph, this would be the lowest point, so this is a minimum. Another word for minimum is the vertex, so you might see that on your IXL. Minimum and maximum, that's another word for vertex. Okay, and then the last point is, or I didn't mean literally a point, but yes. The last point is to find a point to plug in. So my favorite number is 1. So I'm going to plug 1 in. X is equal to 1. Y is equal to 1 squared plus 2. Y is equal to 1 plus 2. Y is equal to 3. So my X was 1. My Y is 3. So I go over 1 and up 3. It's symmetrical, so since I have a dot here, I have a dot here. Connect your dots, and that is your answer. All right, good luck. Message me if you need any help. Good luck.